The room was bathed in dim golden light. Flickering shadows cast by the scented candles scattered across the sleek marble-tiled floor. The air was thick with heat. "God, Emma," he groaned, his hands gripping my waist, fingers digging into my flesh as though he needed to hold on to something, anything, or risk losing himself entirely. I smirked, enjoying the way his voice trembled, the way his muscles clenched beneath my touch. Ethan was always so composed, so in control in the outside world. But here beneath me he unraveled. And I relished every second of it. I shifted, pressing my hips down, feeling the hard proof of his arousal between us. A sharp gasp escaped him, his head falling back against the pillows. "You know I do," he admitted, voice hoarse. His hands moved up my body, fingertips tracing my curves before gripping my breasts, his thumbs brushing over my hardened peaks. I arched into his touch, a soft moan escaping my lips as I leaned forward, capturing his mouth in a slow, deep kiss. Our tongues tangled, his taste intoxicating, whiskey mint, and something uniquely Ethan. His lips moved to my throat, trailing wet, open-mouthed kisses down to my collarbone. "You're so goddamn perfect," he murmured against my skin, his voice a dark promise. I gasped when his mouth found my breast, his tongue flicking over my sensitive nipple before he sucked hard, making me arch against him. My fingers tangled in his hair, holding him close as he worshipped my body. "Ethan," I moaned, my thighs tightening around his waist, urging him closer, needing more. He looked up at me, his eyes dark, full of something unreadable. For a moment something flickered across his face, an emotion I couldn't quite place. But before I could ask, he claimed my lips again, his hands roaming, teasing, driving me to the edge. And then, just as I was about to fall apart beneath him, my phone buzzed. At first I ignored it, too caught up in the sensation of Ethan's hands, his mouth, his body. But then it buzzed again. And again. Still trembling from the intensity of his touch. My fingers swiped across the screen, unlocking it. One new message. "Your husband is not who you think he is." A shiver ran down my spine. Ice cold despite the heat of our passion. I stared at the words, my heart pounding, a strange, uneasy feeling creeping through me. "Emma." Ethan's voice pulled me back. He was watching me, concern flickering in his gaze. I hesitated, then forced a smile. "It's nothing," I lied, locking my phone and tossing it aside. "Just spam." Ethan studied me for a moment, his fingers brushing against my cheek. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yeah." He didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press. Instead, he kissed me again, deep and consuming, his hand sliding down my body, pulling me back into the moment, back into him. But even as I surrendered to his touch once more, my mind lingered on that message. And for the first time since I married Ethan, I felt something I never expected to feel. Doubt. The next morning, Ethan was already gone by the time I woke up. A note sat on his pillow, his handwriting neat and precise. "Had an early meeting. Didn't want to wake you. Love you." I stared at the words longer than necessary, my fingers brushing over the ink. "Love you." He said it so easily, so naturally. And yet, last night's message still lingered in my mind like a stain I couldn't wash away. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my messages. The mysterious text was still there, glaring at me. My finger hovered over the screen, debating whether to delete it, pretend it never existed. But instead I did something else. I replied, "Who are you?" Seconds passed. Then minutes. No response. A deep breath filled my lungs as I got out of bed, wrapping Ethan's robe around my body. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, but it clung to me like a second skin. Staring out the window at the city skyline. Then my phone buzzed. My heart leaped into my throat as I snatched it off the counter. One new message. "Meet me. Tonight. I'll tell you everything." A location followed. A bar on the other side of town. I gripped the phone tightly, my mind racing. This was insane. What was I doing? Meeting a stranger just because of a cryptic text? But deep down, something in me whispered that I needed to go. That this wasn't just some prank. I spent the rest of the day trying to distract myself, lunch with friends, a trip to the spa. I gripped the edge of the bar for support. My entire body felt like it was sinking into the floor. "That's impossible. You were my husband. We were married. We slept together." Nathan's lips quirked in a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Yes, Emma. I know. And at the time, I thought that was the truth. But the truth, he exhaled sharply. The truth is, before I lost my memory before the accident, it wasn't you I belonged to. I shook my head, refusing to let his words sink in. No, Ethan isn't. He's not like that. He would have told me. Nathan leaned in, his voice low. Would he? A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to laugh in his face and tell him he was insane. But something in his eyes, something raw and haunted, made me pause. Ethan and I. Nathan hesitated for the first time. He licked his lips as if struggling to find the right words. We were together long before you ever met him. But no one could know. Not his business partners, not his family, not you. I swallowed, my throat dry. This is insane, I whispered. Nathan smirked again. But there was no humor in it. That's what I thought too. Until I started remembering. I dug my nails into my palm, trying to ground myself. And what exactly do you remember? Nathan studied me for a moment before reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, and then turned the screen toward me. My heart nearly stopped. A photo. Nathan and Ethan. Together. But it wasn't just any photo. It wasn't the kind of casual snapshot two friends would take. Ethan's hand was wrapped around Nathan's throat. His lips pressed against his jawline. Nathan's eyes were half-lidded, his body leaning into Ethan's grip. The intimacy between them was undeniable. I tore my gaze away, my pulse hammering in my ears. No, I whispered. This has to be fake. Nathan arched an eyebrow. You really think I'd go through all this trouble to lie to you? I wanted to scream that yes, of course he would. That this had to be some twisted trick. But deep down I knew. I felt it. Ethan had always been possessive. Even in the beginning before we were married. But I'd mistaken it for love. For devotion. The way he always needed to know where I was, who I was with. The way he got tense anytime I mentioned my ex-husband's name. Even though Nathan was supposed to be dead. I thought he was jealous. Now, Nathan's lips parted. But before he could answer, my phone vibrated against the counter. Ethan. My stomach lurched. I grabbed the phone with trembling fingers, staring at his name flashing across the screen. Nathan's expression turned cold. Answer it. I hesitated. Answer it, he repeated. With shaky hands I pressed the button. Hey. Ethan's voice was warm, smooth as always. Hey baby. Where are you? I swallowed. Just out. With some friends. A pause. Which friends? The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. His tone was casual, but I knew him well enough to recognize the edge beneath it. I glanced at Nathan, who was watching me carefully. Just some old friends from college. Another pause. Then, I'll send Marcus to pick you up. Marcus. Ethan's driver. His bodyguard. His watchdog. I gripped my phone tighter. That's not necessary. I'll be home soon. Ethan chuckled softly. Of course, baby. Ethan had always been protective, obsessively so. If he suspected even for a second that I was hiding something, he wouldn't stop until he found me. My fingers curled into fists as I forced myself to move, slipping into the passenger seat. Nathan wasted no time getting behind the wheel, starting the car with a low rumble. As we pulled away from the bar, I glanced over at him, studying the sharp lines of his face, the way his jaw clenched like he was battling demons of his own. How much do you remember? I asked quietly. His hands tightened on the wheel. Enough. That's not an answer. Nathan sighed. I remember Ethan. Us. What we had. What he did to me after the accident. His voice turned bitter. The way he used my memory loss against me. The way he made me believe my life with him never existed. He shot me a glance. I remember you. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Then why didn't you come for me sooner? Nathan hesitated. Because by the time I pieced everything together, you were already married to him. Ramming into our rear bumper. The impact sent us jolting forward, my body slamming into the seatbelt as Nathan fought to keep control of the wheel. They're trying to run us off the road, I gasped.
No shit na tan growled.
He took a sharp turn down a side street, tires screeching against the pavement. I gripped the dashboard, my heart hammering as we sped through the narrow alley, barely squeezing past parked cars. But the SUV wasn't giving up. Another hard hit. The car lurched violently, and for a terrifying second, I thought we were going to spin out. But Nathan held firm. Ethan released me. I stumbled back, my breath coming in short gasps as Nathan reached for me, pulling me behind him. "This ends now," Nathan said. Ethan chuckled. "Does it?" Sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan's expression finally changed. "You called them." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "I had to." He tilted his head, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then, just as the sounds of footsteps filled the hallway, he smiled. A slow, knowing smile that sent a chill down my spine. "You think this is over," he murmured. "But it's not." The door burst open. Officers flooding the room. Ethan didn't resist as they restrained him. His gaze locked on mine until the very last second. Even as they took him away, I knew the truth. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Nathan's words hung in the air between us, thick with meaning. "Take Ethan down." The idea alone sent a chill down my spine. Ethan had built his entire life on control, deception and power. He had fooled me. He had broken Nathan. And if we didn't stop him, he would never stop coming for us. "We need proof," I whispered, my mind racing. Nathan nodded, his jaw tense. "I have some. Conversations, messages. But it's not enough. He covers his tracks too well." He exhaled sharply. "We need something bigger. Something that ties him to everything. A reckless." The night air cool against my skin. I felt the weight of everything crash down on me at once. The lies. The betrayal. The realization that I had been nothing but a pawn in Ethan's game. Nathan turned to me, his gaze unreadable. "Are you okay?" I let out a shaky breath. "I don't know." He reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. "We did it," he murmured. "You're free." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Am I?" Nathan's expression darkened. "Emma." I cut him off with a soft whisper. "He'll come back." Nathan exhaled sharply. "Then we'll be ready." Silence stretched between us. Then, without thinking, I reached up, cupping Nathan's face. His eyes burned with something raw, something unspoken. And before either of us could second-guess it, kissed him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was desperate, aching, filled with every ounce of pain and relief and passion that had been building between us. Nathan groaned against my mouth, his hands gripping my waist, pulling me against him. The heat between us was instant, undeniable. His lips moved hungrily against mine, his fingers sliding under my shirt, gripping my bare skin as if grounding himself. "Emma," he rasped, his forehead pressed against mine. "Tell me to stop." I didn't. Instead, I kissed him again, my body pressing against his. My fingers tangled in his hair. I needed this. I needed him. Nathan lifted me effortlessly, carrying me inside, his lips never leaving mine. We barely made it to the bedroom before we were pulling at each other's clothes, skin meeting skin, breathless, desperate. When he finally pressed into me, filling me completely, I let out a soft, shuddering gasp. Nathan groaned, his grip tightening as he moved, slow and deep, his lips trailing over my throat. It wasn't just sex. It was something deeper.